All right, Kevin, back here in Toronto, the Raptors pulled out the Game 1 win despite 55 combined points from Stephen Curry and Klay Thompson. Entering last night, Golden State was 32-4 this season when the Splash Brothers went for at least 50 combined points. How about Draymond Green? He also notched his 5th triple-double of this postseason, most in a single playoffs since Magic Johnson in 1984. Before this loss last night, the Warriors were 29-1 when Draymond had a triple-double. On top of that, the Raptors did not get their usual production from Kawhi Leonard. He only made 5 of his 14 shot attempts, 23 total points. Those 5 made field goals tied for his fewest in any game this postseason. And all-star point guard Kyle Lowry scored just 7 points on 2 of 9 shooting from the field. Coming into Game 1, Toronto was 2 of 8 in playoff games when Kyle Lowry scored under 10 points, 2 and 8, I should say. But you know what? They still won, and the 2-time defending champs lost, but they are not
We're champions. You know, we understand what it takes. We know what each of us are capable of, and you know, we hold ourselves to a higher standard than most people.
Do you guys feel that you guys are kind of the enemy of the series and people want to see you get knocked off the top?
That's cool. You know, people in the States are rooting against us because we beat all their teams. So.
Sports Center on the road, presented by Rocket Mortgage by Quicken Loans, as we welcome you back to City Hall in Toronto, Ontario, Canada. And my friend, 2008 NBA Finals MVP, Paul Pierce, joining us now with a lot to talk about. So
yes.
Draymond Green and the Warriors have confidence, as they should, as the 2-time defending champions. But I think after Game 1, obviously, this NBA Finals feels very different. We all know the effects of missing Kevin Durant, but you think it runs deeper than the obvious, right?
Yeah, I mean, I just don't believe they have a lot of room for error. I believe that, you know, these guys have to play great. Not only Steph, Klay has to be great. He hasn't played well in quite some time, up to Klay standards. Draymond has to be great every night. And, you know, without KD, without full, healthy DeMarcus Cousins, they don't have the strength and numbers they had back in the day when they was winning 73 games. These guys got to be great. And KD allowed these guys to not be as great, and they still win because they had so many other great players who could step up any given night. But right now, they don't have that room for error anymore.
And they've never experienced this kind of adversity after Game 1 because they've never lost a Game 1 in the NBA Finals.
They've never been down in Game 1, and they've never had to start up a playoff series on the road, since they've won championships.
Exactly. I think just the conference finals against the Rockets, but 19 of 20 have been at Golden State. We talked earlier about Pascal Siakam's impressive play. How about Fred VanVleet? Good on offense, but he was the primary defender on Stephen Curry last night. He was really good, Paul. What is he doing that maybe not everybody else is
I saw him gain his confidence in the conference finals because he didn't have a great playoffs up until the last few games in the conference finals versus Milwaukee. He started knocking down threes. We always know he was a scrappy defender, but that's where they need him the most, is scoring, where he can give you like 15, make shots from outside when they're collapsing on Kawhi Leonard. And he's been a real X factor for them because Kyle Lowry didn't have a great Game 1, so he really picked up the slack for them in Game 1.
Yeah, so defensively on Steph Curry, but as you said, offensively. And by the way, good, meaning he's shooting 67% from the field in the last 4 playoff games, which coincides with the birth of his baby son. See, just keep having babies and you'll shoot great in the playoffs, apparently. Don't you go anywhere. Much more to come from Paul Pierce here in City Hall, Toronto, Ontario, Canada. Did you guys see what happened at the end of the game with Draymond Green and Drake? We're in the 6th. We got to talk about Toronto's favorite son, don't we? This time, is he out of line?
We certainly appreciate his superfan status, but I think that's an absolute bright line that we have to draw.
Do I like him as a Raptor fan? No. If it's one of his soft R&B songs, I'm gonna skip it.
I'm not worried about Drake. I called him on his cell phone earlier.
Okay, I love that bite from Steve Kerr. And last night, Drake was up to his antics once again, despite the commissioner saying, please don't. He and Steph Curry chatting during the game, picking some lint out of his hair. Someone told me it was for sale on eBay, then someone said it wasn't. And then it was Drake and Draymond Green chatting. Good thing I can't read lips from here, because I'm sure there were some interesting words tossed back and forth. I know. We're going to talk to you in a second, Paul. Calm down. Paul's comments on this. First, let's listen to Draymond today after practice.
That's Drake talking on the sideline. Like, I think so many people make a big deal out of it. It is what it is. He a fan. He talk. And it gets more attention because he's Drake. So many people have complained about it. Like, you don't let any other fan do that. Yeah, any other fan just not Drake. So they probably shouldn't be able to do that. That's just kind of how the cookie crumbles.
Okay, So, yes, he's right. He is not any other fan. But to some people, it's like, well, then he should be treated like everybody else. Just because he's a rich rapper doesn't mean it should be any different. However, put that aside. You're playing in this game in the NBA Finals. Should you or any of your teammates be engaging at all with a fan during a game?
I mean, you got to understand, Drake is probably every Warriors or favorite rapper. And so like, for him to be on the sideline, you know, I'm sure Steph has hung out with him, Draymond has hung out with him. They get a lot of banter together when they hang out and on the court. He represents Toronto. I thought he was on his best behavior yesterday, despite the things he's done throughout the playoffs. Relatively speaking. You know, so when Curry walked up to him, you know, Draymond walked up to him.
Exactly.
You know, he wasn't out there doing all this yesterday.
But my point is the players. Should the players be doing that in the middle of the NBA Finals game?
They're friends at the end of the day. I mean, you know, it gets. I don't know. They're friends.
Times have changed.
I don't know. Times are different. You know,
old school players.
You know, people want that picture on social media when they walk over and, you know, they get their followers up. I don't know.
Okay.
It doesn't bother me one bit.
It's
I probably
fun.
would come over there and say what's up to him, especially if I was winning.
It's fun to watch.
Yeah,
Especially if you're winning, but the Warriors were not.
If I wasn't winning,
By
I
the way,
wouldn't speak to
it's
him.
chilly here. We're putting the hand warmers away, so I don't get ripped on anymore.
Warmers,
The last
oh my God.
Eastern Conference team to have a 2-0 lead in the finals, Paul's 2008 Boston Celtics, who went on to win the title. So Sunday night, the Raptors look to take that 2-0 lead. Wait a minute, you're supposed to be unbiased.
Let's go
Paul's
Raptors.
rooting for the Raptors here. Game 2. It's 8 p.m. Eastern on ABC and streaming live on the ESPN app Sunday from here in Toronto. Thank you, Paul.
Thank you.
Here comes Siakam, sidestep, layup is good.
Had someone told you that in your very first NBA Finals game you'd put up 32 points, what would you have said to that person?
Probably thought it was crazy.
Well, hello, Pascal Siakam. The third-year forward had an historic night. 32 points shooting, 82% from the field. That was the second highest field goal percentage in a finals debut in the shot clock era. Bested only by Adrian Dantley for the Pistons way back in 1988. Last night, Draymond Green said he needs to take Siakam out of the series. Siakam asked about that today by our Mark Schwartz.
You are now a target as far as Draymond Green, former Defensive Player of the Year.
I think for me, just going back, you know, man, watching the film and you know, looking at ways I can get better.
Well, I've never seen anything like that before, right? I mean, that's a pretty big stage for a guy to put that kind of performance on. He's been given a God-given ability of having a big engine with lots of energy that enables him to play with a certain speed, athleticism, and it enables him to work very hard every single day.
How about this? Last night, Siakam became the first player since Michael Jordan to register 30 points and shoot 80% from the field in a finals win. Jordan did it in Game 2 of the '91 finals. That was the game he defied gravity, laying the ball in after switching hands midair. Who can forget that? Jordan's Bulls, of course, will go on to defeat Magic's Lakers in 5 games, their first of 6 titles. Wow, I love flashbacks like that. Brian Windhorst putting him in some pretty good company. Pascal Siakam, one of the most impressive storylines from last night's win here by the Raptors. He's had a really good season overall, too. I think just most people down in the lower 50 don't pay as much attention to him and the Raptors overall. What more can you tell us about what he did?
Well, he's probably going to win Most Improved Player in a couple of weeks, and this performance only burnishes his resume, Sage, for his contract extension talks that are coming up in about a month. He is eligible to extend his contract, and I think he is headed to be the next $100 million player in the NBA. That's the kind of impact he has had. He's been a little shaky in this playoffs, but it's the first time he's had this role. To play at this level and support Kawhi, getting him locked up will be very important, especially with uncertainty about Kawhi's future.
I know this is a different era, $100 million for Pascal Siakam.
I think he could be headed in that
surprise
direction.
people?
Well, I think when you look at a guy like this, they're so hard to find these types of versatile players. They obviously could wait and let him become a free agent, but if he becomes a free agent, he's going to get that offer elsewhere.
So now the question for the Warriors is how do you slow down Pascal Siakam and keep Kawhi Leonard in check? So we have a couple more days to discuss that. In the meantime, we mentioned earlier in the show, Andre Iguodala. The good news that the MRI on his lower leg came back clean. But there's more concern out there for Iggy.
Yeah, now this injury didn't just happen yesterday. Remember, he missed a game in the Blazers series. He also had an MRI at that time, Sage. And the reason that they're so cautious right now is that this injury is in the Achilles area. They want to keep an eye on that Achilles. That's obviously something that they're trying to protect him from. That's why they're trying to keep his minutes down, because overuse can lead to an Achilles injury, especially at someone his age. So while they need him very badly on his defense on Kawhi, especially with Kevin Durant out, they have got to try to protect him both for short and long term. And that Achilles is obviously something that's important.
Wow, maybe reduce minutes for the 2014 and 15? I can't keep track of all these titles. NBA Finals
He played 30
MVP.
minutes yesterday. That might be his limit in this finals.
Oh, yeah, he did not look like Andre Iguodala for sure. By the way, coming off a loss, the Golden State Warriors 22-7. Regular season and postseason, that is the second best mark in the NBA. They need Iggy to keep that one going. Brian Windhorst, thank you, sir. Stick around, please, with us throughout these NBA Finals. We need your information. The Warriors' weaknesses were exposed last night here in Toronto. But coming up, Paul Pierce is here, and he's going to tell us why missing KD is not the defending champ.
Now I can't get that song out of my head. We find out what stopped Tigers' momentum on the back nine this afternoon. And Sage, speaking of momentum, Toronto is feeling pretty good today.
I got to tell you, we are right here downtown. This city is abuzz after last night's NBA Finals Game 1 win, their first ever NBA Finals win, and they actually truly believe that they can win it all and take down the two-time defending NBA champions. But first things first, let's focus on Game 2. They got to do that first. There's already a lot of news surrounding Sunday's Game 2 on ABC. First, the Warriors gave us an update on Kevin Durant. Steve Kerr says the two-time Finals MVP is officially out for Game 2. Again, it's official now. It shouldn't surprise anybody, as KD has played since May 8th, or hasn't played since then when he strained his calf in Game 5 against Houston. After last night, Golden State 5-1 since Durant went down. As for Iguodala, there's some good news to report after hurting his left leg in the closing minutes last night. He had an MRI today. The MRI came back clean. He has not been great lately. 0 for 11 from 3 in his last 4 games, while averaging almost 30 minutes per. For Andre Iguodala, overall, good news. Here's his head coach, Steve Kerr.
The thinking is when he's ready to play, he'll play. It's not like, this is a sore ankle or, his knee is sore or whatever, and you can play through it. And this is a tricky one. If you re-injure the calf, then that's it. And then he's done for the series. So when he's ready to play, he'll play, and that's our approach.
Why did you guys make the decision to have him travel here if he wasn't going to play?
Because our training staff is here. And we need him with our training staff, and we also need our training staff for the rest of our players. And Kevin also wanted to be with the guys.
Sports Center on the road is presented by Rocket Mortgage by Quicken Loans, as we welcome you again. Toronto, Ontario, Canada, in City Hall, a beautiful location here on a nice sunny day. The day after the Golden State Warriors were surprised a little bit by some people. The Toronto Raptors making history, Stephen A. Smith. Let's talk big picture, because for the Warriors, a lot has to change. Steve Kerr says he now has some real tape to watch on this Toronto Raptors team. I sat next to Stephen A. last night. There were a lot of things he was talking about as far as this game goes, but one thing was that transition defense, and that the Warriors gave up 26 points from transition D. If you're this team, what's the most important thing you're taking from watching that tape?
Well, listen, I can respect where Steve Kerr is coming from in terms of transition defense, because obviously that's pivotal. And if you score 109 points in the game and you still don't win in an NBA Finals, obviously that matters to you, because your thinking is if we can get stops, we should be able to win no matter what. But what I took from it is that third wheel, the absence thereof. I saw Steph Curry show up. I saw Klay Thompson show up to a lesser degree. I saw nobody else for the Golden State Warriors show up offensively. Now, you compare that to Toronto, and what did you see? Kawhi Leonard, 23 points, but certainly not on his A game, primarily because he's walking around hobbling to some degree. So Pascal Siakam, my most improved player of the year, drops 32 points on 82% shooting, 14 of 17 from three-point range. Pau Gasol hit 60% from the field, 20 points. Fred VanVleet comes off the bench, hits 15 points, 4 threes. You saw supplementary parts on the Toronto Raptors show up and show out and say, our man is a bit hobbled. We're going to step up and handle our business. You saw Toronto doubling up Steph Curry, getting the ball out of his hands, and you saw no one else step up and take the bull by the horn to sort of save the day. To me, that's a bigger issue than getting back in transition defense.
Okay, much more to come on the game, but I need to point out something that happened earlier this week. You hosted a SportsCenter special on Tuesday. Talked about a lot of things during that hour. During it, you asked if Kawhi Leonard is the best player in the world. On the panel, Michael Wilbon, Doc Rivers, the Clippers head coach, as well as Magic Johnson. Doc followed up Magic's comments. His answer has now gotten him into some hot water. Take a listen.
The most like Jordan that we've seen. Like, there's a lot of great players. LeBron is phenomenal. KD is phenomenal. Not that he is Jordan or anything like that, but he's the most like him. Big hands, post-game, great leaper, great defender, in-between game. If you beat him to the spot, bumps you off. And then you add his three-point shooting.
All right, the NBA, from those comments by Doc Rivers, has now fined the Clippers $50,000 based on what they call tampering. Here's what Commissioner Adam Silver told the Boston Globe. Doc has been at this for a long time. Head coaches or team executives in those positions, you just say, I'm not permitted by the league to respond to that question. And it's a balance of interest. I understand that. But he unfortunately crossed a bright line, end quote. Stephen A. Smith, your reaction.
Well, my initial reaction, I was incredibly disappointed by the league's decision. I thought that it was grotesquely unfair simply because ESPN, we had marketed the fact that Doc Rivers, along with Magic Johnson and Michael Wilbon, were coming up on the show days in advance. It was very, very clear that it was a SportsCenter special and an NBA Finals preview. So if there was going to be any kind of an issue, I would think that the league would have contacted Doc Rivers. They would have contacted us or whatever the case may be.
But why? Just to say don't talk about Kawhi Leonard?
Just to make sure you're reminding Doc Rivers, excuse me, you can't talk about an individual player. We're talking about an NBA Finals preview, for crying out loud. And last time I checked, Kawhi Leonard is the star of the Toronto Raptors. But in fairness to the league, I did speak to the league office earlier today, about an hour or so ago, and they reminded me that, excuse me, we fined Magic Johnson for similar comments about the Greek Freak that people thought were relatively innocuous and was undeserving of a fine, because he was talking about how he thought the Greek Freak was going to take the Milwaukee Bucks to the championship one day. So that should not have been finable, but nevertheless it was, and we have to be consistent, particularly when other teams in the league are calling us, demanding that we be consistent. So that leaves me here today, sitting here feeling very contrite, like it's pretty much my fault. It was my special. I put it together. I was the one that asked Doc Rivers that question, and I feel some level of responsibility, and I'm very apologetic about it.
Did you talk to Doc?
Not yet.
Plan to?
I tried to reach him on a couple of occasions within the last hour, but I was coming over here for SportsCenter, but I'm sure I'll speak to him later.
Kawhi Leonard has a player option, of course, for next season and is expected to opt out, become an unrestricted free agent. That would take place 6 p.m. Eastern time on Sunday, June 30th, as the entire country of Canada, especially here in Toronto, holds its collective breath, hoping Kawhi Leonard decides to stay right here in Toronto, as he has led them to an historic trip to these NBA Finals. Much more to come from here in Toronto, including Andre Iguodala. A lot of players hobbled in this series, but some interesting news out about Iggy today, maybe more so than just that clean MRI. Brian Windhorst standing by live to talk about that. More from
to look at this guy. He has been doing great. New dad with the most critical shot of the night, 3:20 to play. Yeah, look at that three, rattle, run, and click. The shot clock ticking down. Van Fleet with the three. The shot rolled, paid away with us, and he beat the clock. So it was a monster moment. Congrats.
Monster Moment is brought to you by Godzilla, King of the Monsters. Now playing in theaters everywhere. Long live the King.
Let's put some numbers on the Raptors' big win in Game 1. It's been 13 years since the team won its first finals game in team history. That was the Mavericks back in 2006 against the Heat, who also made their debut in the finals in that game. Toronto scored 26 in transition last night, tied for their second most in a game this postseason, and the most Golden State has allowed in any game of these playoffs. And the Raptors forced the Warriors into tough shots, contesting 44 of 78 attempts. Tough shots equated to a rough field goal percentage, shot only 23% on those shots. That was the Warriors' worst percentage in the last 5 postseasons. The Warriors' defensive strategy pretty simple. Get the ball out of Kawhi's hands, make someone else beat you, and Pascal Siakam happily complied. We got our NBA analyst Tim Legler here. That defensive effort by the Warriors is not an isolated incident. Worst defensive efficiency by a Steve Kerr team since he got to Golden State. What's the problem with the D these days?
Their transition defense was awful last night. And I think they all allude to it after the game. They gave up 24 fast break points, but those don't take into consideration secondary fast break points. So who knows? That number could be 35 for all we know. Too easy in a finals game to give them clean looks. And really, for me, Dave, it's all about communication. And first, I want to, as I was watching this, I said, I want to make another point real quick, because you talked about the contested shots. This is just a great play by Kyle Lowry, because there's no business for him to leave the strong side shooter when he's got 2 defenders there. But that's exactly what he does. And he's the guy that causes this miss. That's just sheer effort to make the play. But here's the bigger point for the Warriors. Transition D. Now, as you come up the floor, you see Kawhi Leonard is handling the basketball. Andre Iguodala does a nice job hustling back, and he's declaring ball right now. It's exactly what you're supposed to have. Here comes Kyle Lowry. So, okay, that's going to be Clay. You got a third guy over here, Siakam, who's running to the corner. Draymond Green knows, okay, I'm going to hang out for a second in case Kawhi continues to go, but I know ultimately I'm going to have this shooter if the ball goes there. So where does that leave Kevon Looney? Well, Looney running down the middle of the floor, when the ball's already declared, he needs to be running back here to the lane to provide help in case there is penetration or a quick shot, he's going to get the rebound. That's not what he does. Instead, watch. He runs over and he muddles this whole thing up because now he declares ball. So he hands off Lowry to Iguodala. I guess that's okay. The problem is Klay Thompson now. He doesn't know who he's guarding. He was expecting to get Lowry. Now when Siakam clears out, Draymond Green has to go with him, basically. And remember I said Looney should be in the middle of the lane? Why is that important? Because here comes Marc Gasol running down the middle of the floor, and he just gets a free run. This is an easy 2 points on a play when you had 4 guys back. This should not happen. Miscommunication, you can blame the rust a little bit maybe on this, but for me it was just guys not talking it out and doing their job. Another contested shot here. This example is even worse because when you grab the rebound and there are 9 guys in front of the guy with the ball, there's no way you should give up something quick right away. But watch what happens. Here comes the push. Now you say, well, how does this happen that they get this easy shot? Kawhi's running the lane. Klay Thompson, who's really not even looking at the ball, he figures, I'm going to go here. Here comes Fred VanVleet. That's who Steph Curry is guarding. You can see Steph pointing to the other side of the floor. He's like saying, Sean Livingston, get over there and take ball because I'm picking him up. So the problem on this one is Sean Livingston. He's just jogging in no man's land. He's not accomplishing anything. He should be here to stop the ball, which would allow Draymond Green to stay with Danny Green. But that's not what happens. Nobody gets there. Eventually, obviously, Draymond Green has to stop the basketball. And now you get this simple pitch and catch to a guy who, by the way, has really struggled to make shots. You give him a wide open 3, that's a 9-point game with 7.5 minutes to go. It's just not good enough by their standards, by NBA standards, and certainly not for the NBA Finals. And that, to me, is the easiest thing for them to clean up, and that's what they're going to focus on the tape today.
The underreported part of the Warriors dynasty was their defense. I mean, we all know about the glitzy offense. They played good D as well. It wasn't evident last night. Doesn't sound like Durant's going to be there in Game 2. Iguodala banged up his leg again. Who knows what he's going to be like. Cousins didn't give him much. What kind of challenges are the Warriors looking at here?
They've got their hands full. Look, this is going to be a long series now. Last night I thought Toronto, they can't win the series unless they win last night. They can't take that gut punch right off the beginning. They set the tone, what it's going to be like. But look for a much more physical approach out of Draymond Green on Siakam. He talked about it after the game. He issued the challenge to himself, so I'm really curious to see that matchup. And then the pace offensively. I thought they got sucked into thinking it was all going to work itself out if they just continued to play. I didn't see the same pace and ball movement that you normally see out of the Warriors. Expect that adjustment in Game 2 as well. So, look, they've got their hands full. It's a really good team with a superstar leading them. But it's still the Golden State Warriors. Nobody's bounced back from adversity the way that they have the last 3 years when they needed to.
I think that's what last night we kept on waiting for that Warriors run, and it just never happened. The Raptors basically wire to wire to take Game 1. Legs with us here, breaking it down.
Since we're in game form, you see Drake didn't rub Nick Nurse's shoulders, but he did actually take something away from Steph Curry. We don't know what it was, but that was just a moment. And apparently he went to the gram and said it was some lint, and it's going to be on sale on eBay right now under the username of Draymond Shouldn't Wear 23, suggesting he's not that good or worthy of that. Meanwhile, folks, plenty of familiar faces in the North as Chris Bosh and several former Raptors were on hand for the franchise's first finals appearance. There were reports that former face of the franchise, DeMar DeRozan, would be on hand, but that was just not the case. However, he did have these well wishes for his former teammates. When you look at the Raptors and you look at Kawhi and your dear, dear friend, Kyle, who's always been loyal to you, how do you feel about that organization now?
You can't never have no malicious intent towards nothing because it'll come right back on you at the end of the day. You know, so for me, every guy that I have a relationship with on that team, you know, I talk to them at least once a week, you know, tell them if I see somebody about the game, what they didn't do, what they did, what I could help with, you know. So for me, it'd be different if I was the guy like, I don't want to hear that. Don't call me. I hope y'all lose. You know, I just try to be supportive because at the end of the day, it'll come back around.
It will.
So for me, happy for him.
Okay. And we'll leave it right there.
Yeah, we leave it right
there.
All right.
And we well, shall we? The Raptors will look to do something that no other team has been able to do, beat Steve Kerr and the Warriors in 4 straight games in a single season. Only 3 other teams won 3 straight. The Rockets this year, the Jazz last year, and the 2015-16 Cavs, who overcame a 3-1 deficit in the finals. That shocked Golden State, if not everyone in sports. Meanwhile, free agent defensive